A well-regulated militia being necessary to the security of a free state, the right of the people to keep and bear arms shall not be infringed. Welcome to another edition of Bearing Arms, Cam and Company. My name is Cam Edwards. Glad to have you with me on the program today. Hopefully you are stuffed as I am from a fantastic St. Patrick's Day. My wife puts on her Irish Soul Food Fest each and every year. So last night it was corned beef, colcannon, straight cabbage, some sort of turnip dish, couldn't even tell you, other than it had bacon in it, and it was delicious. Irish soda bread, and then some sort of Irish apple cake for dessert with Jameson-infused whipped cream. Yeah, it is. I tell you what, I gained 30 pounds in the first 6 months after I was married, and I have been struggling ever since to take it off. So anyway, hopefully you had a great weekend as well. Join us on the program today, Holly Sullivan from the Connecticut Citizens Defense League. We're going to talk about something that popped up almost literally overnight in Connecticut last week, a bill that was introduced that will, if enacted, create these not permanent gun-free zones, but temporary gun-free zones, about a month long, surrounding Election Day throughout, well, most of Connecticut, because this would cover every polling place, every drop-off location, and a quarter-mile radius around each of these sensitive places. Yeah, and again, Connecticut lawmakers wasting little time after introducing this bill to hold its first hearing or their first hearing. Thankfully, the Connecticut Citizens Defense League was on top of this. They rallied their members, as I said, literally almost overnight to oppose this bill, and they successfully got hundreds of gun owners to weigh in. Here to talk about it again, Holly Sullivan from the Connecticut Citizens Defense League. Take a look and listen. Holly, thanks so much for coming on the show today. It's good to see you again.
Thank you for having me, as always.
Yeah, and this was sort of a modern day Sybil Ludington moment for you last week, and the folks of the CCDL. For those of you who don't know your Revolutionary War history, Sybil Ludington had a midnight ride of her own, alerting colonists to the new Americans to the threat of the British in Connecticut, I believe it was, right, in New York State during the Revolutionary War.
Yeah, so it was from Carmel, New York to Danbury, Connecticut. So really just about maybe 20 minutes from where I'm sitting right now. So
there you go. And the reason why I make that analogy is because, you had a sort of not quite a midnight ride of your own. Thankfully, modern technology has advanced to the point that you don't need to get on horseback to alert CCDL members to the threats against their Second Amendment rights. But really, you all did not have a lot of time between the introduction of this bill and the first and maybe the only public hearing, right, on this bill that would impose how many hundreds of gun-free zones across the state of Connecticut?
Countless. We actually don't know exactly how many, because it would include ballot boxes, and we'll get into that. Ballot boxes are everywhere now, so it's very difficult to even determine exactly how many locations this would affect.
But talk about the timing of this. When did you all learn that this bill was dropping?
So apparently they released the language officially on Thursday. We got wind of it Monday, and then we had an action alert out first thing Tuesday morning.
Okay. And then the hearing was Thursday of last week. Is that right?
Thursday. So it was 1 week from the time that the language sneaked through. We were on it, and I have to give CCDL members so much credit, because this has become like the dream team. So on Tuesday morning, there were 0 written testimonies in our favor on this bill. And by the time the hearing happened the next morning, we're over 400 testimonies in opposition, just from CCDL members that just hopped on, did what we've asked them to do, get engaged, get involved. People got up to the Capitol building on almost no notice. But we still have a long road to go, because this bill is still very much alive.
Okay, yeah. So no vote was held last week, right? This was the initial committee hearing, chance for the public to weigh in. They learned about it, right? And it sounds to me like the overwhelming amount of testimony was in opposition to this. It wasn't just that CCDL members rallied and spoke out, but that the supporters for this bill were sort of few and far between.
Yeah, there were very few. I want to say there was maybe 15 written testimonies in support, over 400 of ours in opposition. But the harsh reality is, and folks, we love seeing the testimony, but the harsh reality is it's not a democracy in committee, right? It's not the number of votes or the number of testimonies that wins over the legislators. They're there with their own agenda that they'd like to accomplish this session. So it really has everything to do with who is the makeup of your legislature, and flipping seats becomes key to fixing these things.
That's right. Yeah, no, you're absolutely right about that. We've talked about that and the struggles in Connecticut in the past. So where is the bill right now? It's still in committee. Do you know when this could come up for a vote?
Not yet. So it's going to have to make its way through at least one more committee. It's going to have to go through Judiciary Committee because there is a Class D felony that would be imposed on gun owners. So it does need to go through our Judiciary Committee still too. So we can get into this bill, man. I'll tell you, it is a disaster. It makes a large portion of this state a gun-free zone during any kind of election activities. So right now, the way that it's written, it's 1,000 feet, which is almost a quarter of a mile of any location that, and I'll read it to you because it's got 6 different places. It's where ballots are counted, where ballots are stored, where there's a ballot drop box. But what people don't realize, it's not just on election day. Early voting goes for a few weeks before election day, but it also includes municipal elections, school budget voting, referendums. How on earth would a law-abiding gun owner have it on their radar all times rolling throughout the year that there is a referendum and they just wanted to go pay their car taxes and they just committed a Class D felony?
Yeah, that's insane. I mean, again, to have to keep track of all these things. And look, Connecticut's a small state, right? You got a lot of towns that are sort of jammed up next to one another. So let's say you've got a local election in the town right next to you. Well, you're not going to get notified about that in the mail, right? You're not a voter in that town. But let's say that's where you do your shopping.
Right.
If you are within a quarter mile, right, or 1,000 feet of a drop box location, which again aren't exactly widely advertised, again, you're committing a felony offense. I mean, that's the thing. The danger to gun owners here. There is no danger, by the way, to poll workers, right? This is a solution in search of a problem, but it's creating a nightmare scenario for gun owners, just based on the sheer number of gun-free zones that would be established, the temporary nature of these gun-free zones, right? So you don't know when they're not in effect. I mean, do you think, Holly, the intent behind this bill is to create new felons in the state of Connecticut out of law-abiding gun owners?
There is no question that the sponsors of this bill are not neutral on gun issues, right? These are all folks that are very much not in our camp. Also, on top of that, so federal Senator Richard Blumenthal actually put an article in the New Haven Register last week, and it's, if you don't know, his son Matt Blumenthal is one of the chairs on this committee. So these are all folks that are very much not in our camp with Second Amendment issues, don't seem to understand it. But I think, yeah, I mean, and on top of that, you've got a lot of groups like your local Republican town committees that use these municipal buildings for their meetings. So it's going to have a disproportionate impact on certain parties versus other parties, where maybe carrying and going to town hall is not that big of a deal, but now they can't participate in municipal functions and their RTC activities and all of these other things. So in my town, what is kind of unusual, none of our voting locations are gun-free zones right now. We have a library, we have a community center, and we have town hall, and I'm sorry, and a firehouse. And none of those are schools. So they kind of made the case, well, everybody's used to it being a gun-free zone anyway because it's usually in a school. Well, not in my town. Not a single person votes in a school in my town. So we're not accustomed to that. But what I did try to point out, a lot of our volunteer firefighters have permits to carry, right? The firehouse is 393 feet away from a ballot drop box, which would be off limits now for weeks leading up to the election. So if a volunteer firefighter gets a call, they're at the grocery store, there's an emergency, time to go. You need to go home, lock up your gun, then go to the emergency call. Is that really what we want to do? And are we going to remove gun owners from wanting to do public service? This is not right. And I think that beyond just making felons out of gun owners, it's also going to have a huge impact of removing gun owners from public service altogether.
I think you're right. Either that or disarming them, right? I mean, that's the choice that the Democrats want to make here. And listen, it may not be explicitly about creating more felons, right? That may be the backstop. If you don't stop carrying, that may be the real intent, right? To prevent the exercise of our Second Amendment rights, to stop people from bearing arms in self-defense. And if you don't, well, then chances are, you're going to commit a felony offense and we could put you in prison. So that's the choice that we have to make as gun owners. And you're right. This is part of the denormalization of gun ownership. It's part of the demonization of gun owners, right? It's about making exercising your Second Amendment rights not just legally dangerous, but culturally taboo. And to make gun owners themselves suspect in the eyes of their neighbors, their coworkers, their family and friends.
Absolutely. And to that point, the Secretary of State testified in committee for almost an hour, and she was asked, has there been a situation in Connecticut where poll workers were intimidated with a firearm? There is not one case that they could reference. Not a single proponent of this bill could reference one single example in this state where any poll worker has been threatened with a firearm at any point in time. Could not come up with one example. So it begs to truly question what is the intent of this bill. And the only thing that Representative Blumenthal could reference in his public hearing, well, it happens in other parts of the country, so we're going to get ahead of it and ban it here first. And that is just completely disrespectful for the people. If anybody doesn't know how hard it is to get a permit in the state of Connecticut, it is not easy and it is not cheap. We've jumped through all of these hoops to lawfully carry and follow the rules that were created in statute by that legislature, and they don't respect it.
Well, no, they don't, because they don't respect the right to carry, right? Those, again, all of those hoops that you talked about are ways to try to prevent people. Another way for people to, try to prevent people from exercising their rights, right? We're going to make it expensive. We're going to make it time consuming. We're going to make it so difficult for people who, go to work from 9 to 5, who work hourly jobs. They're going to have to take time off of work to go and get their permission slip to exercise their constitutional right. And then once they have that permission slip, once they've been fully vetted by the state and they've been approved to carry, then we're not going to let them carry anywhere because we still think they're too dangerous. You're spot on about, again, the implications of this, not just from a legal perspective, but from a cultural perspective. And I'm curious, again, you talk about the makeup of the legislature being what it is. Have you had a chance to talk with anybody on that committee since the hearing? Do you think that anybody's mind was swayed, or at least mind was opened to the unforeseen consequences or maybe even some of the intended consequences of this bill?
My personal opinion is that I think that there are folks in the minority party that may have read the bill at face value and said, okay, we're protecting poll workers, and not understood it, who will now understand it and the bigger implication that it has. But the majority party, I kind of expect them to largely be in step with one another. And if anybody, doesn't know the makeup of Connecticut, we're a very blue state. So majority party, I do anticipate that there's going to be a lot of support in the majority party for this bill. And I also anticipate that if this bill is not successful this year, it will be tried next year and the year after that and the year after that. And for anybody who's watching in a state that is relatively free or a purple state, this will be coming your way. And that's why shows like this are so valuable, is so people can learn what are they doing in those deep blue states behind the blue curtain, so to speak, that we can anticipate and start and learn and be ready for when it comes to our state, because they will replicate this elsewhere.
They will. No, you're absolutely right. I mean, we actually saw a bill signed by Governor Michelle Lujan Grisham in New Mexico this year that was originally meant very similar to Connecticut, right? Just an outright ban on guns at polling places and around polling places. It was amended to exempt concealed carry holders by the Democratic majority in the New Mexico legislature. Michelle Lujan Grisham ended up signing that into law, even though it wasn't what she wanted. And I was a little surprised to see that bill watered down, because I thought it was going to be the high test version that ended up on her desk. But, that exemption can be taken away next year. right? Governor Grisham could put the screws to gunners and say, well, or to legislators and say, well, that didn't go far enough. We got to crack down. And so you're right. They don't, these bad ideas never fully disappear, right? They can get litigated away, but then they'll come back in a revised form. So what are you telling CCDL members? Obviously you're, encouraging them to weigh in, but what are you telling them to do now that this first hearing has taken place? What's the next step for the organization?
Yeah, absolutely. So, we're obviously on it. I'm in touch with our legislators, all of those things. Right now, our membership should just stay vigilant and watch for our action alerts. So if we call folks, and they've been fantastic about it. Our members are amazing. We've got 44,000 members. And just to watch the testimonies tick up based on an email, based on a social media post. We also have an outreach committee led by Dr. Walt Cupson. And in a moment's notice, we've got volunteers that hit the floor in gun stores. They're talking to people online while they're waiting for their paperwork to be cleared. And they're getting testimonies in. And, it's all organic, right? So right now, we're watching the next progression. We also now have a lobbyist in Hartford. We've never had a lobbyist up there before. So CCDL has hired a lobbyist. So we do have a presence up there all the time. So we're kind of working on that. So our membership should stay tuned for our action alerts. And then really it's 2024 and it's already March. What do we need to do? It is great to respond to bills when they hit the floor in committee, but it is better to not have those representatives up there at all. So right now, folks should be thinking about what time they can put away to volunteer for campaigns, because we have a big election coming up and we can turn seats. We can look at some of these folks that are just going to fall in step with others, not recognize our rights, and let's get them out of office. And we don't have to fight so hard during legislative session if we put that same passion in during campaign season. Because if we can turn seats, we don't even have to talk about this. So that's what we can be doing.
That's right. Yeah. The best way, listen, you can always challenge a bad law in court, but it's always so much better to defeat a bad bill in committee or on the floor. Right. And in order to do that, as you say, you've got to have those numbers. I got to ask you, though, before we let you go, are there any legal updates in any of the lawsuits that CCDL is pursuing?
Yeah, so right now we have an appeal up to the Second Circuit in our Grant versus Lamont case, which is our assault weapon ban case. So we're standing by. Things are slow when you get up to the appellate level, right? Things move very slowly. One of the big cases that we did have was CCDL versus Thody. One of the interesting things about the Second Circuit is they have not historically ever recognized organizational standing. And that was one of our big items that we were focused on, is CCDL having organizational standing. So the Second Circuit recently did rule against CCDL on the merits of our CCDL versus Thody case, but they did mention that they assume CCDL has standing. So we're starting to creep in the right direction. And they also further recognize that they are out of step with every other district in the country on that all the other circuits are recognizing organizational standing. So we are making incremental changes.
Well, that is a small step in the right direction. Holly, listen, I cannot thank you enough for all of the work that you do. And again, the 44,000 members of the CCDL, they are inspiring, and they are an example to other gun owners all around the country. The activism on display here, it really is something I think to talk about and to tout, because we need more of this in every state of the union. The states that are Second Amendment friendly, the states that are incredibly hostile to our right to keep and bear arms. We win when we're active. If we're apathetic, if we stay on the couch, if we don't lift our finger to call our representatives or to type an email, we lose. But if we're active and engaged, we win.
Absolutely. And I could not be more proud of how agile our members were and how just incredibly powerfully they came out this time, and they knew what to do, and it was second nature, and people got on it. And I'm just really, really proud of the CCDL members. We still have a long way to go, but man, we've made strides. So
absolutely. Holly, thanks so much for coming on the program today. It's good to see you, and I look forward to doing this again very soon.
Thank you so much.
My thanks to Holly for joining me on the program today. And thank you again to all of the Connecticut gun owners out there who responded to the CCDL's call for action, who weighed in, who let their voices be heard, because that is what it takes. not only in, the red states where we've got friendly lawmakers, but in blue states as well. So again, thank you to those Connecticut gun owners for using their voices. Let's turn our attention now to today's armed citizen story, our good deed of the day, and our recidivist report. We'll start there with a case out of El Paso, Texas. Not necessarily a true recidivist report, but still a what the heck was the judge thinking here? El Paso man sentenced to probation and community service for shooting his girlfriend last year. That's right. And this wasn't an accidental shooting. Erwin Shavira, under this plea deal, sentenced to 10 years probation as well as 200 hours of community service after prosecutors say he shot his girlfriend in the foot during an argument last year in El Paso. The victim told investigators that Shavira was high on cocaine when he shot her, that he threatened to kill her if she told police what happened. Despite all of that, the judge saying, yeah, I'm not sure that prison's the right place for you. So Erwin Shavira, again, 10 years probation, 200 hours of community service. Let's hope that he doesn't follow through on that threat now that he is back on the streets. And again, I'm flummoxed here as to why the prosecutors, first of all, offered this as a plea bargain and why the judge went along with it, unless the victim suddenly refused to cooperate and was unwilling to testify. Seems to me like there was a very strong case against Shavira, but no time at all behind bars for the young man out of El Paso, Texas. Today's armed citizen story from Muskegon, Michigan. We don't have a lot of details. This happened early Monday morning, Eggleston Township, Michigan. But authorities with the Muskegon County Sheriff's Office say that a homeowner fatally shot an intruder this morning after they assaulted a tenant in an attached apartment and then tried to get into the home. Fox 17 in Michigan reporting the 38-year-old man was reportedly banging on the window of the home just before 2 o'clock in the morning. Deputies in Muskegon County say the man then went from trying to bang on the door or bang on the window to breaking in to an apartment that was attached to the home. Once he gained entry into that apartment, he assaulted a person inside before trying to get into the main house. That's when the homeowner shot the suspect. The suspect passed away from his injuries there at the scene. Identified at this point, again, only as a 38-year-old man. We don't know if there was any connection to the home, what this individual was trying to do at 2 o'clock in the morning to get inside, why the occupant of that apartment was assaulted. But hopefully we'll get more answers here in the hours and days to come. Finally today, our good deed of the day. In the right place at the right time, we're able to do the right thing. 3 off-duty police officers in Central Virginia who came to the aid of a woman who was trapped in a burning car. There is a image of the car in question. On its side, you can see flames just engulfing that vehicle. And again, were it not for the quick thinking of these off-duty officers, this woman very easily could have lost her life. This happened back on March the 5th near Lynchburg, Virginia, near Timberlake Road. Virginia State Trooper Gilberto Herrera was the first of the 3 off-duty officers to get to the scene. He said, I was expecting the worst. He was driving with a friend. He saw the car on fire. He said, I thought the vehicle was going to blow up at any minute because of the way that it was. Sergeant Chad Hudson with the Lynchburg Sheriff's Office says that he was driving as well. He saw a car behind him erupt into flames. He said, I actually watched it. It looked like it was rolling while it was on fire. He said, to be honest, I'm not really thinking. I just see there's a fire. I'm running towards it. And there's somebody inside. Eric Valise, a Lynchburg Police Department officer who's also off duty, saw what was going on, said when he got to the car, he said there was a lady inside. And there were citizens and other law enforcement officers. We grabbed what we could. We got her out of the vehicle. She apparently was going in and out of consciousness at the time. It was very difficult to remove her from the car. She wasn't able to actively assist in getting out. Meanwhile, again, the car is already on fire. Hudson says that the heat from the fire, the flames started popping the tires, so there was like a small bomb. Valise ended up with a back injury that landed him in the hospital. He said, I'm finally walking again. I'm here standing, but I'll be out of duty for a couple of weeks. Herrera said there was no dispute, however, about what action to take. He said, I'm going to get you out. We're probably going to die together. Emergency personnel arrived a few minutes after the off-duty officers were able to extricate the woman from the vehicle. In fact, they said the fact that they all survived is a major blessing. Said that the woman must have a reason that she is still here right now. She was ticketed for reckless driving, taken to the local hospital, but Lynchburg police says they're not sure how she's doing now. Sounds like, however, she has recovered from her injuries, thanks again to the quick thinking and the fast actions of these off-duty officers, Sergeant Chad Hudson with the Lynchburg Sheriff's Office, then Virginia State Trooper Gilberto Herrera and Eric Valise with the Lynchburg, Virginia PD, all in the right place at the right time, willing and able to do the right thing to save a woman from what could have been a deadly wreck there in Lynchburg. Now, that is going to do it for this edition of Bearing Arms Cam & Company. I want to thank you for being a part of the program as always. I'm looking forward to being with you again tomorrow. I can't tell you what day it's going to be, but I think one day this week we're going to be talking with Daniel Schmutter, New Jersey attorney, about this case out of Somerville, New Jersey, where a gun store was sued over its location. We have good news to report there, but there's a lot of other stuff going on in the Garden State, and looking forward to being able to catch up with Daniel Schmutter at some point this week. We'll see you back here tomorrow. Until then, be sure to check out BearingArms.com for the latest Second Amendment news and information from all across the nation. And if you like what you see, I'd encourage you to become a VIP or VIP Gold member. Just go to BearingArms.com/subscribe. Use the promo code SAVEAMERICA, and you can get a significant discount on your VIP or VIP Gold membership. We're going to give you exclusive content. As our way of saying thanks for showing your support, because your support really does make a difference, and it truly does matter. So, thank you again. We'll see you back here tomorrow. Until then, be well, be safe, and be free.